Well, of course, war did occur, and it ended up with the U.S. government in an even stronger position vis-a-vis Europe and Japan. At this time, it moved to absorb the sterling and franc areas into its own dollar-centered financial system. And again, it used intergovernment debts as the lever in order to make Europe dependent on it. And this was established both in loans to Britain and by the Bretton Woods institutions, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, that were incorporated in 1944 in the United States. Now, for the last 75 years, people have said, oh, the World Bank and the IMF are internationalists. It's altruistic. America put up the money to help create an international harmony. But in fact, the IMF and the World Bank, from the very beginning, were imperialist ventures by the United States to make other countries dependent on it and to concentrate financial and export power in the US economy, not in Europe, not in the sterling area or the franc area. So when the US diplomats set to work on global planning, they used the government's creditor power as a lever to open foreign markets to US exports and to US investors. And they saw this as a tactic to consolidate U.S. control over foreign economies. So instead of seeking direct payment of its wartime loans, as happened after World War I, the U.S. officials set about trying to conquer its allies in a more enlightened manner this time, demanding economic concessions as a part of a commercial bargain. So it said, well, we're not going to ask you to pay. We're going to give you money this time. We'll lend you money instead of acting as a creditor, but and demanding you pay. But while in exchange for us giving you loans to get by and rebuild your economy, you're going to have to make certain concessions. You're going to have to give up the sterling area. You're going to have to stop your own protectionism and agree to buy in U.S. markets, not your own markets. And this was nationalism writ large. No other country or grouping of countries should ever be in a position to dictate economic and diplomatic policy to the United States, the Americans said. What was at issue was who was going to dictate policy to whom. U.S. officials said, we will not be a member of any organization where other countries can tell us what to do. We're going to join the IMF, International Monetary Fund, but we need to have veto power by having a quota set that we're the only country with veto power. We need to veto the World Bank. If we join the United Nations, we're going to have veto power. And that's how the Security Council came into being. And the United States refused to join the World Court because it said, we don't have to obey the laws of any other nation. The United States can set the law. And you've seen the neoliberals in the last few years say, America creates its own reality. And it creates its own law. That's what makes the United States the exceptional country. So the first post-war aim of the United States was for the dollar to replace sterling as the world's major currency and as the basis of the monetary system in general. Germany had been unable to conquer England in World War I and II, but the United States was able to do it without firing a shot because it had the money, and England simply felt willing to surrender to the United States and give the United States everything it asked for. So America's creditor position remained the key leverage. The Treasury Secretary under Roosevelt, Henry Morgenthau, started putting on pressure on Britain to sell off their big companies, Shell Oil, Lever Brothers, Brown and Williamson Tobacco. And in January 1941, the Senate Relations Committee promised, and I'll quote, if Lord and Lady Astor, the British royal family members, own real estate in New York, their assets will be on the auction block within the rest. America said, European countries should sell all the assets they had in America, and they should let America buy European assets. This was the beginning of the double standards that's lasted for the last 75 years. Well, the first fight was over America's lend-lease loans to Britain. America had arranged a system where they would finance the cost of Britain's war effort by lending or leasing it the money. It would lend it the money with the understanding that at the end of the war, England would repay the United States for the cost of building its military bases and its other articles. So there was a historian, Richard Gardner, wrote a book, Sterling Dollar Diplomacy, which is sort of the official history. And he wrote, I'll quote what he wrote in it, the price of congressional cooperation in appropriating lend-lease funds was the assurance that the president would require some benefit in return for lend-lease beyond the defense of the United States by the military action of other countries. In other words, the Congress had to approve any kind of financial agreement that the United States made with England or Europe or other countries. And Congress said, you have to get a quid pro quo. Congress has always been the right-wing militarist arm, largely Southern congressmen, saying we have to win. And the attitude of Congress is that Donald Trump has announced again and again. If any contract we make with other countries, America has to win, they have to lose. That was his campaign slogan when he was running for president 4 years ago. And that's exactly what congressmen, the American First Committee, and others insisted. So the representative for Britain negotiating these debts was John Maynard Keynes. And in 1941, he was given a draft of the Lend-Lease Agreement that called for a very strict commitment to non-discriminatory foreign trade and the end of British preference. British imperial preference meant Britain had given special tariff preference to its colonies and allied protectorates like Canada and Australia. America said, you have to end this tariff preference. You have to have the same tariffs for everybody else, no more preferential tariff for members of the British Commonwealth. Now, ending that left the Commonwealth countries with a lot of money that they built up during the war. During World War II, England's colonies had provided it with raw materials, with exports, with all sorts of material for the war effort that England had paid for in sterling. And these were called blocked sterling balances. The agreement that England had signed with India, African colonies, Australia, were that its Commonwealth countries could only spend these dollars within the Commonwealth, mainly on Britain for British exports and for British goods. But America said, you have to abolish this protectionist policy and let these billions of dollars of sterling balances be available to be paid anywhere. And of course, the United States was in the position to be the major market and the major export supplier to these countries. So in effect, America said, we want to replace Britain in your own colonial markets. We want India and South Africa, Australia and others to buy American exports, not your own British exports. And Britain agreed. So that part of the Lend-Lease Agreement, Article 7, called for the elimination of all forms of discriminatory treatment in international commerce, and also to reduce tariff and other trade. So Keynes noted that nothing at all in this agreement says anything about America lowering its tariffs or lowering its protection. America said, well, you have to abolish all of your preferences. We're going to raise our agricultural quotas and tariffs, and we can protect ourselves, but no other country in the world can protect itself. That's the international law that we want Britain to sign. And Britain was willing to sign it, and by signing it, it set the stage for all the other European countries to sort of follow. And once the European countries followed, the third world countries were faced with a fait accompli. What could they do? They went along, they could say, well, I guess that's the world system. I guess we better sign on or be left out. And at that time, countries were not rich enough themselves. They didn't have the ability to be self-sufficient, to have any option except to depend on the United States, because they had not done what the United States had done or Germany had done and protected their own self-sufficiency. So America's new president after Roosevelt, Harry Truman, said that when it came time for repayment of the Lend-Lease, then if Britain can't pay its dollars for petroleum needed by her that America was supplying her, Truman in World War II was head of the Senate War Investigating Committee. And so Truman was setting the rules of on which the Senate would lend money to Britain to enable it to do the war. And Truman wrote that if Britain needs oil, or it needs ships or it's shortage of anything, then it has to pledge to America the petroleum resources that it has in Asia, South America, the Dutch East Indies shell, should turn over its foreign assets to the United States to pay for this oil after the war. Well, you can imagine right after the war, America proceeded to say, okay, now you owe us the money, give us your foreign oil assets, your foreign raw materials assets, all the assets in the colonies that you've had. So the American government insisted that the wartime Lend-Lease support stop with the end of hostilities, and all of a sudden, there was peace in 1945. America stopped lending England money. England was broke, and so it needed, what was it going to do in the first year of peace? It needed to import, it needed to rebuild the economy, and so it needed a new loan. And the $10 billion in sterling balances that I mentioned, America already had said, well, we want it to be spent on us, not on you. Egypt, Argentina, India, and other countries were holding these. So America said, well, I guess you need a new loan. So it negotiated the British loan, and the British loan locked in all of the American power over.